welcome to Navigating the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Tessa Grint, and in today's episode, we are going deep on a problem that we've explored through Your Workplace Agony Aunt, which of course is our weekly email where we solve some of your workplace problems. And I am thrilled to say that today I am joined by a guest who happens to be a brilliant friend of mine. Welcome, Lucy Shutt-Vine, founder of the Career Remote. Please, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi Tess, how exciting to be on a podcast with you. So I'm founder of the Career Remote and I have been helping individuals change career so that they find enjoyment in their jobs, but also working with businesses to create workplaces that people enjoy working at and actually have career plans within them and opportunities to train themselves and have that development within them. So it's lots of different ways to press the buttons of the career remote to give everyone something that they enjoy.
Love that. Can't wait to hear more about it. So today's problem that we're going to solve is I feel like my manager is gaslighting me. And before we get into it, I actually feel like we should start right at the beginning for this one because I think the word gaslighting is used quite a lot these days. And I think it's really important to just kind of start on an even keel and look at a definition of it. So I'm just reading from my notes here. So according to good old Google, the definition of gaslighting is to manipulate someone using psychological methods into questioning their own sanity or powers of reasoning. So, Lucy, bearing in mind that definition, what might gaslighting look like in the workplace, do you think?
Oh, what a big juicy topic this is, and I think I've seen it firsthand as well. And it's not nice to when you feel like you're being gaslit, and it's basically when people are telling you one thing, but their actions are doing something else, and that's how I've seen it in the workplace. And it could mean that an example of this is when somebody wants to get a promotion, let's say, and they're on track and they think they're doing all the right things to get it, but for some reason it never seems to formulate into anything. And they're thinking, what's going on? And I've actually seen a recent example of this. It wasn't myself, which I'm pleased to say, but I saw it happen in action where a manager just kept saying, yeah, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. They kept putting meetings in the diary, saying, let's talk about it. And then last minute, changing that meeting or not turning up to the office that day and being like, oh, whilst I'm not in, let's rearrange. And it went on for months. And it was almost drip feeding to that employee enough that they were sort of happy in their job. But in reality, it just meant that they were delaying everything. So they never had to have that really uncomfortable conversation that that promotion was never on the table for them. And it was horrible to watch because that person ended up really depleted, but depleted at the end, which wasn't nice. Um, so yeah, I've seen it in the workplace. I've seen it happen. It's conversations that are misleading, which
Yeah,
is probably the best way to think about it.
love that example. You've just totally reminded me. So I spent 3 years working towards a promotion that I was essentially kind of gaslit the whole way, but actually really pleased it never happened now because it was never meant to be. It was never meant to be the one for me. But I had a really similar kind of thing. Not so much that they didn't turn up to the meetings, that the meetings would be put in place. We'd do like quarterly appraisals and all that sort of stuff. In each one, my manager would be like, okay, if you do more of this, then next time I'll put you forward, kind of thing. So I did more of that thing. And then we got back to the appraisal, and then he found something else that I hadn't done. And it was just this kind of ever dangling carrot. And it was just so hard to deal with.
It's so unfair
Yeah.
because you really want to know that you are working towards something in that
Yeah.
case. And the one I was talking about, the lady actually got made redundant at the end, and she's like, "What? That was not what I was expecting. I was expecting, a higher pay salary, a bigger
Yeah.
role, not to be made redundant and, jobless."
God. Good reminder for all of us, I think, especially in this day and age, that work is just a number. You are just a number, but you can redesign it and make it what you want. Um, cool. So, have you got any examples of where you have been gaslit at work specifically?
Now, I was thinking about this. I probably have been gaslit. I've probably erased it from my memory just to be like, oh, protect myself, protect my sanity. But when I wanted to change from sales, so that was my first 8 years in employment, I worked in sales and I had massive burnout from this. And I felt like one way I was being I don't know if gaslight's too extreme for this, but there was definitely this sort of like parent-child relationship going on between a manager position and myself, where they kept telling me off, and I was like having extreme burnout at this stage. I mean, you probably remember it. It was not a nice time. It was just so many tears, but I couldn't even register what was happening. And it was this idea of being told off and taken off into
Yeah.
rooms and being like, you're acting inappropriately. And I was like, I feel worn out. I feel like I can't even do my own job anymore, but I just don't want to be doing it. And I don't understand my own feelings at the same time. And it was only when someone explained it to me afterward, they're like, they're acting like a parent and you're the child. And they're saying, you shouldn't act like this in the workplace. You need to get a grip. Whereas actually, what I needed was somebody to say, what's going on? Why are you suddenly feeling really upset about this role and the pressures that are surrounding it? And all the other external things. I think I was going through a renovation and the tiles had all been laid wrongly in the kitchen, which was the tipping point of the stress. Um, but do you remember? It was awful.
Yeah.
But but what I actually needed was someone to break it down to me, going, "What is going on? Why don't you want to be in this role anymore? And what do you want?" Which is
Yeah.
why I ended up going to a career coach who helped me sort that out. And the phrase I'll never forget the career coach saying is, "You like nurturing people, not pipelines." And I was like, "Light bulb." That's why I'm not very happy because I'm stuck in Excel every time doing forecasts, and that is not my forte. Um, but yeah, it was that I needed the manager not to be the parent and to
Yeah.
tell me off. I needed them to act adult to me and
Yeah.
have those really honest, frank conversations, being like, we need you to be performing as an employee, as somebody in sales. You're not doing that currently.
Yeah.
What's going on? How can we help and support you rather than get a grip, sort your life out?
Is that the same career coach that you recommended to me? Is it Kate Hunter?
No, different one.
One.
And I didn't even know I was going to see a career coach. It was
Yeah.
somebody I just happened to be telling one of my clients over breakfast one day. I was like, I'm really not enjoying my job anymore. I don't
Yeah.
really know what to do about it. And she said, Oh, why don't you meet this lady called Sarah?
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what coaching was at that stage.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then, yeah, a few £1,000s later, the best
Yes.
£2,000 I've ever spent, but it really did change my life of exploring what I wanted to do next. And actually, when I did take it back to the business and say, I like nurturing people. Would you be open to me doing a sales enablement role? So coaching and training all of our commercial team on how to be great commercial people. They were like, no, we don't want that. We want you to be in sales. So it was met with a massive, absolutely no way, rejection. But I persevered for a whole year and was like, I
Yeah.
really think I'd be really good at this role. I really think you need it. And if you don't give me this role, I will leave. So you're going to lose this salesperson anyway. But wouldn't it be better if I trained everybody else to be really good at sales?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it did take a year, but I just needed one person to get buy-in and make that
Yeah.
leap of faith with me, which happened.
So, so tell us a bit more about what you did in that year, because I think that's the kind of really important thing here. I teach a lot about the first part of making a change is knowing what you want. So by this time you knew what you want. So then what did you do in that year of like trying to get everybody on board? Or was it just kind of, were you just sort of doing the new role that you wanted to do anyway to show them what it could do? Or what else was there in that?
So I had been doing some elements of that role already within
Yeah.
my roles. So at the time, my title I think was Group Sales Director. So I had a
Yeah.
team of people that I was managing who were doing sales. I was also doing sales myself plus managing them. So I was already doing a bit of like training, coaching them on how to be good salespeople. But I was already doing like wider training to the team, which wasn't part of my remit. I just enjoyed doing it. And one of the things that happened in that time was I got a different manager.
Yeah.
And we're still friends today, so I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. But essentially, he got the manager role above me. And he was like, Look, I want you to strip out all these other bits that are like training people because that's not part of your remit. I want you to sell. I've got targets. We need to hit them. Just sell, sell, sell. And I was like, Oh, that's the bit that's really highly motivational for me. So that being stripped out felt really um, annoying, to say the least. So that was when I said, actually,
Kind
let's
sense of word.
Let's pr well, that was the bit when I was like, actually, let me prove to you that that is the bit that is really important. And because his
No.
style of management was let's sell and let's sell hard, the softer side of that training and encouragement and nurturing was lost a little bit. So it was me just channeling to the different people, stakeholders within the business. If we implement this alongside his management style, there's
Yeah.
massive opportunity here. So it was doing it and it was getting the results. And it was then saying, imagine if this was a role, because it was a new role, it hadn't existed. And we were still fairly, smallish company. This commercial team was 45 people. So to have a sales enablement person for that size is probably unheard of. Um, but I had longevity in the business. I knew the product really well. And I had a good proven sales record with that. What I did was map out a job spec. So I actually
Mhm.
wrote it myself and said, this is what this job would look like. This is what um, it would have as a salary. So I actually did quite a lot of research for other companies who had this type of role and went through their job specs as well and said this is what the roles and responsibilities are. This is what the market value is. This is what I believe it can bring to the team, and this is what it could bring in terms of revenue. So it's like money saved or money gained. And I think if you know those metrics, there's a no-brainer there. If it's going to save the company money or bring in more money, um, that works. And part of it was I will train some of my team about a certain product, and I could then prove that they felt more confident in selling it. Therefore, they went out talking about it. Therefore, they sold more of it. So I was like, imagine if we did this to more of the team. So yeah, as I said, it took me a year, and it took a phone. I remember it so clearly. I was on the phone to somebody who was living in New York and he was moving back to the UK. And I was like, I just really want to do this. How are we going to make it happen? And he's like, I actually really believe in you. Let's make it what happen. So I needed, he was my advocate, and he was the person that like changed it all.
Amazing. So find your advocate. Uh, what did I write down? Let me prove to you that you need this role. And basically, kind of. So again, it's sort of thinking like a leader when you make a proposal like this to a manager or to someone senior, which is what do leaders care about? Well, they want to save money or they want to bring in more money. Let's be honest, most of the time it's a bottom line decision. So actually, if you can kind of reframe it into that, then at least that'll probably get you a trial run of like, okay, let's give it a go and see what happens. And I think like what you did in terms of redesigning the role, writing your own job description, but then also authenticating it within the market as well, like really added um gravitas, I guess, to your proposal. And then like you say, all it needs is one advocate and then you've got your in and then you
Yeah.
can kind of start and then and then like you say, because you'd already got sort of trust in yourself in you as a member of the team. You'd been there for so long at this point, kind of from day one practically, weren't you, I think, for this one. um
Exactly. And the other thing is mitigating the risk. So, as somebody
yeah,
who was senior in that sales position, I had a big revenue target myself that I was hitting
yeah,
consistently. So, it meant that for them, the risk was, well, if you leave that role or leave, who's going to fill that space and
yeah,
bring in that money? So, it was
and that
saying, okay, well, in this new role, I will be doing this, but also to help mitigate the risk of what I'm leaving behind, I'm going to help with that succession planning, which in the case of what happened for us, it was we brought in someone new, and I had a 6 month sort of handover period where I trained her up
yeah,
and also then positioned myself into this new role. So it was a nice crossover period, really, because
yeah,
it was a bit of a win-win for them. There was no loss at any point,
yeah.
but it had to be pitched that way. And the other thing I will add to this is it wasn't just the workplace that was saying, don't do this. There were
Okay.
so many other people in my life, um, probably because of like the life stage I was at. I just got engaged, which
Yeah,
with the assumptions of society is you're going to get married soon, you'll want a baby. I think I was already trying for a baby. So people are like, why would you be changing your career? Why would you want to be doing all of this stuff and adding on pressure when you could just be enjoying getting married and planning the wedding and having a baby? And I was like, because I really want to do it. So I really had to. push it myself. That was my agenda. And I was being quite selfish about it being my career, and this is what I wanted. And I had to really turn down the noise
Yeah.
of the people in my life who were trying to protect me and keep me
Yeah.
safe. But it was like,
Yeah.
for once, I was like, no, please
Yeah.
don't.
I think that's so interesting, isn't it? Like seeing what perhaps other people would class as happiness in their career that they're trying to kind of put onto yours. Like, keep it simple, don't add extra pressure, societal assumptions, all that kind of stuff, isn't it? When it's actually that's what success in a career is perhaps to them, which is earning more money or whatever it may be in a sales role where you have the capacity to earn extra fees and all that kind of stuff. And actually why change now? That's like a really big brave decision. But then also there's so much more to fulfillment than the money. And ultimately, if you're not happy in that, then it doesn't matter who's saying stay and go for it because I'm a big, firm, big believer of, well, it's fact, isn't it? The happier you are in life, the better you will be at work. So,
Yeah. And also, you just don't know what's going to happen
yeah,
afterwards. So I mean, we're talking end of 2018, 2019, when all these
yeah,
changes were happening.
yeah,
So roll on, the following year, we were all put into lockdown. So
yeah,
thankfully, I had changed my
yeah.
career by this point and was much happier. So when we were all in lockdown, at least I had um, a nice career at that
Yeah.
stage. But and also, as I said, I was probably trying for a baby then, but I didn't have a baby till 2022. So I'm
Yeah,
really pleased with all of this going on that I had prioritized my career to something I
yeah.
actually enjoyed. So when all the things around me weren't going so well, being locked down in a house for 23 hours a day, if you remember that awful time, trying for a baby and it not happening, at least I had a career that I liked. So I'm really pleased that I took that chance.
God, it was a weird old time, wasn't it, COVID? That was when, like, the beginning of COVID was when I reached burnout from, I don't know if my manager did properly gaslight me. Like you say, I don't know if that's more of an extreme term, but I reached burnout about May of that year because it was just, I think it was just after or just before the like half year review, and he'd already made it pretty clear that I wasn't going to get promoted. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Why are we still having the same conversation again? Anyway,
Mm.
um, other, what about other sort of ways that managers will gaslight you? I had one really early in my career, um, which I was thinking about just before this call, and I haven't thought about it for a really long time actually, where a girl that I was working with, she was much more senior to me. I was really quite new, and she sort of pestered me and pestered me to like do this particular piece of work. I never really understood why, because I didn't have the kind of knowledge on me to sort of ask a bit more questions about it and get a bit more clarity and whatever. Anyway, she pestered me to do it. I did it. And then she stood up and presented it as her work in this meeting in
No.
front of me. And I was like, oh my God, I've never felt rage like it. And Lucy, you know me very well. I'm not an angry person. I
Oh, I
was
imagine you got a bit flustered and a
absolute.
bit red.
I got, my face went so red, as it often does. Absolutely did not know where to put myself. So something like that, what would your advice be to little Tess when she was younger?
Oh my goodness, that is hurtful. Really hurtful
Yes.
when people take credit for your work. And
Yeah.
I think that is, it takes bravery to have that kind of conversation afterwards, which was, I noticed you presented that work, which I did quite a lot for. I'd like, some credit for, which I don't think I would have had that bravery as a
Yeah.
junior employee to have done. But I probably would have made it quite clear to other people around me, being like, oh, I saw whatever her name was, Julie, present that thing. But I actually did quite a lot of work to contribute towards that. So I probably would have like fed it in different directions. Um, but yeah, I think that's really, really hard when people take credit for your work. And I think it has to come from then, like moving forwards. I mean, that trust has gone now.
Yeah.
And something I really like is when someone said trust is like a piece of paper that if you scrunch it up and then pull it back, it will still be a piece of paper, but it's got all those creases in and you can see it still. It's not going to ever be that perfect, crisp piece of paper ever again. And that's kind of what's happened in that situation. That you still have that piece of paper with this woman and you still have to work with her, but you can now see all of those creases. So I'd be really wary about that. And I think from the future point of going forward, it would always be like, this is the work, this is where I would like to be credited, and just put into practice before it happens what you would want to happen. Can I present part of it next time? Can I have my name somewhere for the work that I have done? And just be really explicit and say, I noticed this happened last time, but this is what I want to do moving forwards. And if they don't do it, oh gosh, I would be avoiding.
That's an idea. Can I present part of it next time? I mean, back in the day, I was too shit scared to present anything. But that is a great idea, and actually, it's really good for you as well to like put your money where your mouth is and growth and
What
all
would
that.
you do now, Tess, if you had to go back in that position? What would
So,
you do differently?
what would I do different? So, I'm trying to remember what I did. And I think the first thing I did actually was as soon as that meeting had ended, I ran outside. I was smoking quite heavily at this point, and I had a cigarette around the back of the office and called my mum. I literally don't know what to do. I'm sure I was crying because I did. That was my kind of like my emotional a sort of way I like processed it, where the emotion came out. And then I went back in. My mum gave me a bit of a pep talk outside while I was smoking. Um, I went back in and I said to her, and I was so brave and I was so proud of myself. And I'm sure I had a bright red face for the whole time I was doing it, but I still made myself do it. And I said to her, um, and I made a point of waiting till our manager had come back to her desk. It was quite a bold move, actually. I was I think I was 20, 21 maybe. And I said, you could have at least said that we both did that. And then her response, I think she was like really taken aback about that I'd said that, to be fair, because she didn't say one word. She didn't recognize it. She didn't answer me.
Wow.
Yeah. So and then I was like, this is really awkward because I think she was my line manager as well at the time. So yeah. So what would I do now? I'd probably do something fairly similar actually to what I did, which is take her to one side afterwards. So I believe in have you read the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott? And it's about
Yeah.
giving feedback. And it's all about doing it kind of kindly, timely, and I can't remember what the other one is. So I would have taken her to one side after the meeting. It would depend how bold I was feeling and actually what the meeting was. If there were important stakeholders in that meeting and I could find a way of showing that I had done some work which wasn't too shouty, didn't like put her down in any way kind of thing. Because it's really tricky when somebody does that, like you say, for you to then be like, well, actually, I did that kind of thing. Or I might try and find a way of saying when I did this bit. But then you just have to be really careful about how you come across. So I would try and say something in the meeting. I would make sure that after the meeting, I took her to one side and I would say, can you talk me through? I would do it in a very different way, I think, to how I would have done it previously. And I would say something like, is there a reason that you didn't say that we did that together? Or is there a reason that you didn't include me in that or something? And then kind of, yeah, see what her response is and sort of take it from there, I think.
Mm.
But
What you just said about the like a feedback, the framework I always use
mm,
for that is situation, behavior, impact, future. So, what was the actual situation? So, the situation in your case was you've just presented a lot of work, but it didn't credit myself anywhere. Um, the behavior of that is it now looks like you've done all the work and it's actually impacted me in a way that I don't feel like that was, part of what I've done.
yeah,
And I wanted, some recognition, and the impact is that it's hurt my feelings in that way. And then it's like asking those questions, like as you said, what what happened. So getting a bit of feedback from her as to
yeah,
why that might have happened, but also then giving her some suggestions as well, like in the future, could we do this together?
yeah, nice.
And I've always found that really helpful to use because it takes out the um you're not using like character like that you're really mean.
Yeah.
You always do this. It's like this
Yeah.
is a really specific moment that I just
Yeah.
want to give that feedback about.
Yeah.
And even just say like, can I give you some feedback? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
But people like feedback in different ways, don't they? Like some people like it written down, some people like, to be taken for a coffee,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
relaxed. Some people like it in the moment as they leave and, walking out of the meeting, so you're side by side. So it's
Yeah.
getting to know that other person on how best to give them that feedback that they're not going to react in a really emotional way of, oh, you've hurt me.
Nice. I think as well, probably one thing that I know now, being a bit more experienced, is that it was never anything to do with me. Like she was quite, I think, insecure in her role. And I don't know, I think she kind of wanted to stand up and present and make herself look a certain way, and that's fine. And maybe she was going for a promotion or like super hungry for the next level or whatever it may be and whatever. But yes, it really it really stuck with me, that did. Um cool. Are there any other ways that you can think of about people about being gaslit at work? Any other like specific situations you feel like we should talk about?
I think if I have advice, if you actually think you are being gaslit, it would be to think about like with your manager, that is just one relationship at work. And actually, at work, you should have multiple relationships. So, the thing that would be really helpful is to speak to other people within the business and being like, this is what I'm seeing. This is the behavior. Like, are you seeing this as well? So,
Yeah.
you have cheerleaders across the business
Yeah.
who can like stand up for you, and help call out that manager if that's what
Yeah.
they're also seeing, to be like, hey, no, that's not the right thing to be doing. Like you said you were going to do this and now you're doing this. So if you can make multiple relationships across the business, it would just be really helpful. So other people can, like, help your sanity to know
Yeah.
that this isn't just going on in your mind, like this is really the reality. But also to help cheerlead and call it out for when they see it. That would be my advice if you think that's happening to you.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Like you say, going back to the definition of it, it does make you question your own sanity. So if there is anything you can do to get other people's opinions in a kind of um professional manner. So like you say, you don't go around bad mouthing this other person, you sort of ask for a sense check around that situation sort of thing, or if that's happened again or something.
Mm. And
Um
also, another time I have actually seen this
mm,
is the woman who was being gaslit actually kept a record of stuff that
okay.
was happening.
Yeah.
So again, she had this like bulk of evidence, and it wasn't to, present to somebody. It was just to, again, say, these are all the times that these are happening to me, which is why I'm feeling like this. And she actually used it as her walking away point. And she's like, I just can't put up with that manager anymore. And, a lot of people do leave companies because of bad management. But she was like, this person is not changing. And actually, it's nothing to do with me. She recognized that. She was like, I've seen this happen to other people within the business who have left. It's happening to me now. But
Yeah.
I'm also not going to let myself get hurt by this. So she basically wrote down, like, this has happened several times. Nothing's changing. The company aren't addressing the bad manager.
Yeah.
She had spoken to HR about it, and nothing was being done. So she's like, it's my walking away point now.
Nice. I love the sounds of that. So my next question was going to be like, is there is there a point at which enough is enough, and what is that point, or is that specific to the individual, or is it specific to the situation? Like you say, if there's so much evidence at that point.
Yeah, how much can you put up
Yeah,
with?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because it's a ripple effect. If you have a bad manager, how is that impacting the rest of your life? Like when you go home, is it then impacting how you're turning up to your partner or the people that you live with or the relationships that you have? If you're a
Yeah,
parent, how is that impacting how you then parent? Are you taking the frustration
yeah,
out on them, which isn't fair? Um, and do you let it beat yourself down, or do you go, that's enough, and I'm willing to walk away? And it depends what you're walking away from, but it affects your morale. It
mm,
affects everything. It affects everything that you do. Work's such an important part. It's such a big chunk of our lives, isn't it? We're
yeah,
there for so long that, yeah, it's up to the individual and how much resilience they have. But I'm also like, why put up with it for that
Yeah,
long if it's really going to have an impact? Because we've talked about this before, but like, are you going to be the same person
yeah,
after something that is really
yeah,
affecting your,
yes,
mental health?
yeah,
Um, you think, oh, it's a good opportunity, but actually, is it? If it's not going to be, good for your health overall for the next couple of years to put up
yeah.
with, is it worth it? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot around. People take jobs that earn a lot of money for a short period of time, thinking that it's okay because by the end of that short period of time, they'll have earned loads of money and then they can do what they want. Exactly, just to explain what you were saying that we talked about previously, which is, and then you get to the end of that 2 years, or even you get 6 months in to the company that treats you like shit, that has a terrible culture, you're burnt out within 3 months and you're just expected to kind of keep going, and the pressure and the stress and everything just keeps building and building and building, and you have zero life outside it, then you can't possibly continue to do that for any length of time, let alone 2 months, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is that you put on it, timeline wise, to make enough money. I talk a lot about holistic health, and it's around the kind of six key pillars of life around what a job. So if you have a job that you don't love, kind of thing, or where there's room for improvement, it affects all of them. So like in terms of like physical health, you feel like shit 'cause you're so tired all the time. Socially, you either you go one of two ways. I find you're either in the pub all the time, which was very much you and me, or you pull back and you don't want to see anyone or go anywhere. Mentally, obviously we all know how it can affect you mentally. Emotionally, you can really sort of lash out without realizing. You can be really highly charged. Spiritually, you'd have zero connection to anyone or anything. And then financially, if you're not doing a job that you love or that you're good at, or you're not allowed to flourish in because of a manager, then you're never going to be able to reach your financial potential because they're kind of suppressing that a little bit. So yeah, huge impact across the board, I think. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
um
it's one of the reasons people leave companies. It's management. So
yes,
it's really important, I think, for managers to be trained on empathy and communication and feedback
yes,
and to want to be good managers
yeah.
to their employees.
Absolutely. Um, Speaking of which, we are just coming past promotion season by the time this is published. And so there's going to be some new managers potentially listening to this. What advice would you have for new managers, or what sort of skill sets do you think are the kind of first few that they should look to upskill on or look at, or what are your thoughts and advice on that?
So I've done a lot of training with new managers, which I also love because I find them so susceptible to be like, how do I become a good manager? And they really want to try, and I love this. Whereas I find that the managers who have managed for a long time are like, I do it my way and that's the only way.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh gosh, but you've got bad feedback. Like, where's your
Yeah.
adaptability? So
Yeah.
if you are a new manager, the first thing you've got to think about is what kind of manager do you want to be? Because you do get to put your own style onto it. And who are you managing? What's your team like? So it's really important to build trust both ways. So the people that you're managing have to build trust to you, but you also have to give trust back. And one way to do that is be open, share vulnerabilities, explain that you are a new manager, that you are learning, and that you are part of this new stage of your career. Take people on that journey with you. I've always found it really helpful when managers are really open because I think it just then shows you that you can take things to them as well. Um, I also think it's important to recognize that are you becoming a new manager to potentially one of your friends, which I've seen happen a lot, is that
Yeah.
you're both at the similar positions, one of you gets promoted above, and then you're like, oh, well, therefore we still are friends, therefore it should be an easy relationship. And I'm like, now just set the scene for this new way of your working relationship happening. So, really good framework to use is about love and discipline. So, if you are already a friend, have a friendship, you're going to have that like loving, nurturing side, most
Yeah.
likely. What you probably don't have is that discipline side. And a good manager has both of these. And discipline doesn't have to be, telling off. I say discipline is more like managing expectations.
Yeah.
As a manager, this is what I expect from you. These are the boundaries of what needs to happen. And if, cross that boundary, there are repercussions. but it's setting the scene for them so that they know what is expected, and then when it's not being met, that you can, give them feedback to help get them there. But I'm going to do it from this loving, nurturing place as well. So you're matching both that love and discipline. If as a manager you have too much discipline, you're telling people what to do all the time, it's my way or the highway kind of attitude, people will get fed up of that. They like
Yeah.
praise, they like nurtured.
Yeah.
But too much of the love and nurturing without the expectation, people can walk all over you. They don't necessarily have all the respect that they can give you. You need both. So I'd
Yeah.
say build the trust,
Yeah.
and then work on what does that love and discipline look like for you as a manager, and how can you be consistent in doing both? You don't want a manager who's like sometimes that loving self and then sometimes like giving you the hard discipline and you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know who I'm getting today.
Yes. It's really difficult to deal with.
Yeah, awful.
I'd add a couple more things to that. So one of the things that I think sets a really brilliant manager, a really brilliant leader apart is somebody that really knows themselves as well. So like what you're good at, where your skill sets lie, and kind of is also aware of their weaknesses where they're just not naturally as skilled, or like naturally just don't have certain characteristics or whatever. I think that's a really, really important part of it. And being able to fully embrace and accept that, and feeling confident in the fact that you know who you are, you know that you can't do these things, or you're just naturally not as good at these things.
Mm,
There's nothing right or wrong. There's no skill sets that are more valuable or less valuable than another. In fact, in a team, it's really important to have a complete mix. Then you get diversity of thought and all that sort of stuff. But just embracing that, knowing that, and being confident in that. And the second thing I would say, which I think we've both mentioned about previous managers that weren't so good, is that they never took the time to get to know me as the person that they were managing.
yeah.
And I think that's really important to kind of understand the strengths and the weaknesses and the natural abilities of the people that you're managing. One of the best things about management is obviously like managing people, but it's the way that you get the best out of them is, as you said, with kind of empathy and communication, and that's all about getting to know who that person is. So if the going back to my initial example of being promised something for 3 years essentially, if he had taken even one hour, one-to-one session, half an hour, one-to-one session kind of thing to ask me what I wanted, he would have known straight away that I was never the person for that job, which is why he was getting frustrated that I wasn't doing things, and I was getting frustrated that he didn't give me the promotion kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like that's
You know what? There's a really nice framework called Boom, which is best out of
cool.
me, which is
Love
simply how do you
that.
get the best out of me? Which is how I know big companies like Google do this, have an employee handbook,
Yeah.
which is if you want to give me feedback, this is how you would best do it with me, which for me personally, it would be like maybe write it so I can think about it first. I'm a bit of a slower thinker, and then we can have a discussion about it. For other people, it might be they want to get their facts and data in
Yeah.
order so that they, might want to counter argue it or say what they were thinking. Some people don't like the written because they can't read the tone of it straight away, that
Yeah.
they'd prefer it to be over a relaxed coffee. So think about how you get the best out of that person. So there's feedback. It's also if I want to delegate work to you, what's the best way of doing this so you understand what you need to do? Check-in points, how often do you want to meet up? Different people have different expectations, as you say, of wanting to be managed. And even like the communication style, do you need bullet points? Do you need it summarized? Do you need it lots of data and facts? Do you need it to be have heavily researched?
Yeah.
But that works both ways. So as a manager, it's also like, how
Mm.
do you get the best out of me managing
Yeah.
as well? So you understand each other, so you can work well. As
Yeah.
you said, it's good to have diversity.
Yeah.
I had a manager who she was very like data and facts, and she didn't like small talk. She absolutely hated it. But I love a little bit of small talk at the
Yeah.
beginning of the meeting. I would hate going straight into like, have you done this? Have
Yes.
you done that? And I said, like, I need that bit of chit
Yeah.
chat. So she actually incorporated that into her one-to-ones. And I knew she actually wasn't interested in the answers, but I was there like, oh, yeah, they did this at the weekend, and then
Yeah.
um, and then we went out, and then we ate this, and then it would be like, how's your weekend? She's like, yeah, that's fine. Right, so let's get on. So
Yeah.
she would allow me to sort of have that moment of like, oh, she's getting to know me. And
Yeah.
actually, probably what would have been helpful if I did know a bit more about her weekend, because that just helps
Yeah.
me, like,
Yeah.
open up that trust. But I love that she started to incorporate it, because I was
Yeah.
like, I know that she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
She's doing it to, satisfy me.
I was just the same. I love a bit of chat about the weekend, how your dog is or whatever, all that kind of chat, but it's really
Yeah.
difficult with someone that doesn't want it. And like fair play to her for adding it in and listening to you and kind of changing on that basis. I think
And
that's
not
admirable.
that the way that we work so differently is I work a
Mm,
lot on like gut feeling of like this
yeah,
feels right, and we do it. And she was so data and facts
yeah.
that I was like, if I can't just go to her with an idea of like, oh, this feels like the right thing to be doing
Yeah.
next, and she'd be like, why? So I also had to adapt my style to her to be
Yeah.
like, based on this figure here and based on that, this is the next thing that we will do. And because she could then see the reasoning and the logic behind it, she was like, yeah, sounds great. Whereas other people I'd been managed by would be like, oh, I've got this really great idea. It feels right. And they'd be like, yeah, do it. Let's see what happens. And
Love
I
that.
like both, to be honest. It doesn't really matter, but it's knowing who you're talking up to
Yeah.
get their buy-in. Otherwise, they can't cheerlead and support you as well.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's so helpful to just know everybody's communication styles and
Yeah.
preferences.
Yes, definitely. I get a lot of people coming to me being like, my manager's a dick, what do I do? And 99.99999 times out of 100, it's because you've just got a clash of communication style. But I
Yeah,
think as well, once you understand each other, that partnership can be a superpower. So I had an old manager, not the one I mentioned, one of the best managers I've ever had, and he was very data driven, very analytical, very, very um I was going to say colors and stuff there, but it depends which kind of process you follow, sort of thing. Which what's the word I'm looking for? School of thought you go with, kind of thing. There's loads of different versions, aren't there, of like communication styles. Anyway, he was very analytical, and then I was over here like very kind of people focused and very empathetic and very about kind of understanding and nurturing others. And actually, we worked really well as a team because he was all about the metrics, and then I was like, is everyone okay? Kind of following up behind, everyone all right, everyone on board with that? And actually it worked
Mhm.
really well. It was a really, really successful partnership because it was two completely complementary styles. And once we kind of got past, there were a few hurdles when we started working together, like you say, because we didn't get each other. And then there was this sudden kind of moment where we were like, oh,
Yeah.
you're not a dick, I'm not a dick, we're just not talking properly, we just don't get it.
Yeah, and that's often the case, isn't it? I
Mm,
had another woman who started managing a team who I was coaching through this process, that she was very much like directive,
mm,
wanted the job to get done quickly, and on that people side that you were just talking about, she was like, they're messing around, they're talking too much, they're not doing what I need them to do. I need them to head down, focus. And I was like, once we did that, we did DISC, psychometric profiling on them.
yeah,
All of her team were like IS, which were like people. I was like, and which is what I am, but they
yeah,
needed that like social time,
yeah,
chatting, fun, interaction with each other. And so I asked, and she was a D, and I was like, "Are they getting the job done?" And she's like, "Well,
yeah,
they are eventually, but they're messing around too much." And I was like, "So you're not really allowing them to like, be in thriving mode for what their personality types are. You're coming at it from a totally
yeah,
different angle." So I was like, "You need to find a compromise." And I was like, I wouldn't have resonated very well with someone who was very directive, like, stop messing around, no talking. As a
yeah,
salesperson, I needed that fun time to get the job done eventually. So
yeah,
yeah, I do think it comes from that self-awareness. You're so right in
yeah.
that.
But then it also, and then that also, it's like when it feels like it's back to the example you gave earlier, though, when you were like being told off by the teacher. And then it's like,
Oh, I hate
yeah,
that. I
no one
think
wants
there's so
it.
much respect, isn't there, that has to
Yeah,
happen in a workplace, which
yeah,
is giving people that freedom to make decisions
yeah,
on themselves. Like, we are adults at the end of the day. And if the people are behaving like children, yes, potentially you can tell them off for that. But it's a bit like if you need time off to go to the doctor or the dentist or whatever it is, just you should be allowed to do these things
Yeah.
without jumping through hurdles and being like
Yeah.
questioned. There was a lady as well that she had a blow dry booked for the middle of the day, but it was because she was in, client facing role and she was going to an event that night.
Yeah, fair.
And she hadn't washed her hair for 3 days, knowing she was having this blow dry. So she looked and felt fabulous for this event in the evening.
Fair.
But her manager put a meeting in for that exact time, and she was like, "Oh, I can't make it." And the manager was really questioning, like, "But I need you there. Why can't you come?" And it was only put in that morning, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Well, if I'm being honest, I'm having a blow dry because I'm going to this event tonight with all of our clients." And the manager went ballistic and was like, "I can't believe you booked a blow dry. That's ridiculous, blah, blah, blah." And she was so upset by it and was like, "Oh, what if I have to cancel and come to this meeting, which she didn't really need to be at?" She's like, "I'm
Yeah.
going to look awful tonight because I haven't washed my hair." And I could really empathize. I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
no, that sounds bad." But
You know
that's the
you
kind
love
of
a
like
blow dry,
level.
mate.
I know, but it's like there's always this like fuzzy line, isn't it? But that was really important to her.
Yeah.
And, leading up to that moment, there were no other clashes in her diary to have done it. It's only because there was a meeting put in like last minute, which I felt like that communication broke down a lot for different
Yeah.
priorities.
Fair. But that's kind of back to the initial point, isn't it? Like you can't show up feeling good if you haven't washed your hair or whatever. If you don't feel good, you can't present well. You can't you know she's not going to feel confident in that presentation or whatever it was that if she doesn't think she feels good. And
Yeah,
like you say, it's just it's all back to communication because I'm sure if she it sounds like he was kind of in a state where he was already fairly enraged by the situation. So perhaps
didn't get
an
it.
explanation at that point wouldn't have helped. But maybe once he'd calmed down in a couple of days to be like, actually, if you want me representing the company in the best way I possibly can, I need to look and feel good. So then I can do that. And
Yeah.
actually, again, it's back to communication, I think.
Yeah. And it's like those rules that for her, she was going out and,
Yeah.
acting on behalf of the company
Yeah.
all evening until probably
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning. So it wasn't like she was working 9 to 5 that day.
Yeah.
So
Fair.
when else was she meant to fit in a blow dry? Which
Yeah.
I would have total empathy for that.
Yeah, for me, you love a blow dry more than most.
No, I'd be like, go for it, get your nails done as
Yes. In
well.
fact, I'll come.
Take a spray tan.
Ah, love that. Love that. What time are we? God, 48 minutes. Very quickly, last but not least, we've covered obviously like being kind of gaslit in the workplace, with a manager. What about the opposite of that, where you're being like micromanaged? Do you have any advice for people that feel like they're being micromanaged at work?
Yeah, micromanaging, it's not a nice feeling, is it? When you feel like someone's watching every single move. And I think for me, when I've been micromanaged, it's that constant updating. Tell me about this, tell me about this,
Mm.
give me the report. And I'm thinking, just let me get on with the job because we're wasting time here for me, like always reporting back. And it comes back to that foundational level of trust. So I think it needs to come from that conversation of like, what do you need to see from me? What is this result? And are you okay with me getting there in any which way that I feel is right? Or are there specific rules and boundaries? So that expectation, that discipline
Yeah.
that we just talked about, and proving that like I will deliver this, I will
Yeah.
get you there, so you can have that trust in me. I actually had feedback that I micromanaged someone once, and I was horrified, but like,
Really?
oh my God. And they'd just joined the company, so they were still in their like first 3 months. And I was like, oh God, but the reason I'm like micromanaging you or, being quite directive about what I want is because I want you to get to a certain standard.
Yeah.
And the coach who was internal at the time, he was like, it's okay. In the first 3 months, if you were not micromanaging for someone who was brand new into the company, I would be, maybe a little bit alarmed. And
Yeah.
because you're in that state of like building trust and
Mm, yeah.
getting
Yeah.
people to the standard so that they can then have the autonomy and freedom to do it in their own way. But at this stage, you need them to be sending out proposals that are correct, have the correct language in,
Yeah.
have the right pricing, which means that you are having to oversee a lot.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, go and sell something and do it your own way, at your own pricing, and like you needed to do that. But for her, she felt like she was being micromanaged. So then it came back to that conversation of like, I'm looking to, get you to a certain standard. We need
Yeah,
to build this trust between us. But once this trust is, being built, there will be opportunity for
yeah.
more freedom to do it. But yeah, it wasn't nice to have that feedback at all. I felt really like,
No,
oh,
I can't imagine you doing that at all, mate.
I
But
know.
good
Well, I
people
probably
with
did
different
though.
perspectives. Say again, sorry.
I probably did.
Yeah, and like you say, sometimes it is appropriate, you know, not
Yeah.
micromanaging, but checking in regularly, I guess. It depends, depends
Yeah,
how
but I think it has to
the
come down to that conversation again and
yeah,
being brave. Like to get the best out of me, I need a
yeah,
bit of freedom. I
yes,
need space to think about something. I'll come back to
yeah,
you. Can we set some expectations? Can we set some deadlines? Can we
yeah,
check in, once a fortnight rather than once a week?
yeah,
But then at the other side of it, if you're then not delivering on that, people are going to
yes,
micromanage.
yeah,
The other time I've seen a lot of micromanagement happen is when there's a lot of pressure happening within the
yeah,
business. And if there's a lot of financial pressure that we have to deliver something, or we have to hit certain targets, all of a sudden, a lot of managers feel this need to be like, I need visibility on everything at all times. And you think,
oh,
oh God, just leave me alone because that's now putting the
yeah,
pressure on me so much that I can't do my job properly.
oh,
So
totally,
it's understanding, and it's probably like that holding your nerve when the
yeah,
pressure is high, it's communicating that we are under pressure to deliver,
yeah,
but I'm going to give you the autonomy to get on with your job and deliver
yeah,
on this. Like I trust you to do it, but I need you to know that we are under pressure
yeah,
without it being like, tell me everything you've done today.
yeah. Oh God, I've had that before actually. You've just triggered another memory of
Oh no, sorry.
no, but it's good though. It's I used to work in kind of numbers and acquisition and stuff, and it was just those messages every morning of like, what's the numbers? How many did we acquire yesterday? What's happened? What's this? What's this? What's this? What's this? And that was like in my inbox, well, on Slack when I logged on at like 8:30 in the morning or something, at which point you respond, and then it's followed by another load of messages being like, why has it done that? Why has it done that? Why has it done that? And all it is a reflection of their stress and the pressure on them and the fact that I think that person at the time felt distant from what was happening and probably a bit concerned about it because the numbers weren't as good as perhaps they could have been. But yeah, not a nice place to be. Not a nice place to be. I was thinking as well then while you were talking, just talking about uh how to kind of build trust, whether it's a new managerial relationship or one that's kind of micromanaging, just really quickly. I think one of the best ways to build trust is to quite simply just do what you say you're going to do. A lot of people, you get into a meeting and you're like, yeah, yeah, I'll do this, I'll speak to this person, blah, blah, blah. You go away and then nothing happens. One of the simplest ways is just that you do what you say you're going to do. And then the second point, which I think you touched on, is just really simple, just get as much clarity as you can from, like I said, a new manager or someone that's trying to micromanage you,
Mm,
because then there's less room for like misinterpretation kind of thing. At which
yeah,
point, if you both understand each other before you leave the room, literally like repeat back to them. So you want me to do this by this time with this person in this way or whatever. Then you go away and do it. Then you report back, and again, it's just ways of building trust. I think clarity and do what you're going to do. I
that
think are really
clarity one is really important because if
yeah,
you think about how many businesses are structured, yes, you have your manager who's going to be delegating work down or
yeah,
directing you in certain ways, but you also might have different teams coming to you
yeah,
saying, "Oh, I need this thing from you," and you might have, well, you might have several teams doing that, but it's like which way are you being pulled?
yeah,
And each team working towards that same shared goal?
yeah,
Because I think when teams aren't aligned with the goals that are all matching up to the overall company vision, it becomes really hard to navigate of, well, they're asking me for this, but I don't really understand the priority of that.
yeah,
So I'll say I can do it, but it might take me a little while longer. But for them, it's a massive priority for their team to get
yeah,
this thing done. And you're being pulled in different directions. So having that clarity, but also managing up to your manager, being like, this is what's being asked for me over here.
yeah,
Should I be doing this? And also to get them talking as the
yeah.
managers alongside each other as well.
Yes. Oh, I've had that before as well when I was like in between two managers, and it's like everyone wants everything immediately, and you're like, no, you
Yeah.
two need to talk to each other. This is awful.
Mm,
Um, but yes, so try and encourage that conversation to happen. Like you say, you just have to, you as if you're caught in the middle like that, you just have to be really transparent. This person's asked me to do this, they've said it's urgent. You've just asked me to do this, you've said it's urgent. And then you need to just get the three of you in a room and just be like, you tell
yeah.
me, I'm happy to do whatever. I can't make this decision. And you're telling
Mm.
me that yours is the most urgent and the vice versa. And it's just, yeah, sometimes
And
it can
when
get
everything's urgent, nothing is urgent. And
exactly.
then creates overwhelm and nothing gets done.
Exactly. And then we're all burnt out. Then you're all signed off work anyway. Lovely. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Not anymore. Not anymore. Thank you so much, my love, for coming on. We are coming to the end now. Is there anything that we haven't talked about in terms of management, being gaslit by a manager, or anything that you think we should have talked about that's really important on the topic?
I think if you're a manager and have been a manager for a while, just have refreshers of what it looks like to be a good
Yeah,
manager. As I said, like first time managers are so absorbent, like how can I be the
yeah,
best? But as you sort of get into more senior roles and you've been a manager for a long time, I can just see it happening time and time again that they get
yeah,
stuck into this is the way I do things. So that would just be my sort of like closing point of if you're an established manager, when was the last time you
yeah,
got really thorough feedback about your management style and how
yeah,
could you adapt and change? And the world changes. If I think about like when I was on the sales floor in, let's say, 2015, some of the things that we used to say on that sales floor would not be appropriate to say in the world. And if anybody had continued to manage and say some of the things that we used to say, they
yeah,
would be cancelled now. So it's a
yeah,
good like self-reflection to check
yeah,
in and be like, is what I'm doing appropriate? And like, we've got new generations coming into the workplace now, like Gen Z. They don't take bullshit. They will leave. So it's
yeah,
really important again as managers to have that understanding of what is important to different
yeah,
generations as well, and how do you manage them?
yeah.
So yeah, keep that self-awareness up.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, actually, particularly for the more experienced, shall we say, leaders amongst us. I actually wrote an article about how leadership has to change in order to manage the new generation, because long gone are what was it? It's like the fear-based dictatorial type of leaders, which I remember when I joined the workplace 17 years ago, having one of those assholes that was really important, supposedly, in the business.
Yeah.
Absolutely no way would any business tolerate him now. No way. Because,
I was thinking about this with The Apprentice the other day. It came on
oh
TV and I was
yeah,
like, this is still relevant. Who wants to be shown someone like Alan Sugar saying you're fired? Like, that's not
yeah,
the kind of workplace I want to work in. I want,
yeah.
nice softy softy, trusting.
I know. Bring on more heart-centered leaders. Alan
Yeah,
Sugar.
I love Mary Portas for that. I think the
Yes.
kindness economy and having kindness in the
Yeah.
workplace is really important. And actually, you get a lot of good things happen when there is kindness as well. You don't need to be dictated to and told how to live.
No.
So I really like her.
We're all adults. You don't need to be dictated to.
No.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on and being my first guest on the
Oh, it's been a
podcast.
pleasure.
Where can anybody watching or listening, where can we find you? Where are we best to find you?
Instagram, Lucy Shutt-Vine _ the career remote. Is probably the best place to come on board this little journey that I've got going on.
Wonderful. Love that. Cool. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and watching potentially. This is new. Hi. If you found this interesting, please like and subscribe and do sign up to Your Workplace Agony Aunts. This is, like I said, our weekly email that we send around solving your workplace problems. The link is or will be in the show notes. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Lucy, so much for being here.
Thanks, Tess.
Anytime. It's great having you. And yeah, thanks so much for listening and see you next time. Bye.